The echo of innocence. The thunder of Edward Hale's voice ripped through the sleek, silent penthouse office overlooking downtown Manhattan. Where the hell is she again? The digital clock on his desk flashed 9 a.m. This was the third time this week the housekeeper hadn't shown up. Edward slammed his bespoke fountain pen onto the glass desk, the sound a sharp final report. Mason, give me her number. Mason, his executive assistant, hesitated. Sir, Marissa Grant mentioned her daughter wasn't feeling well. I didn't ask for excuses. Edward snapped, his jaw rigid. I asked for her number. He snatched the slip of paper, his knuckles white as he furiously dialed the cell phone. He paced the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the indifferent skyline of New York City. Every second of silence on the line fueled his irritation. Then a soft, shaky click. Hello. Edward frowned, his voice cold and cutting. Marissa Grant. Finally. Do you have any idea how unprofessional? No, sir. A tiny voice interrupted timidly. Mommy's not home right now. He blinked, confused by the high, delicate tone. Who is this? I'm Amara, sir. Mommy's daughter. The child's tone froze the word responsible on his tongue. He lowered the phone, staring at the screen. Why are you answering her phone? Where's your mother? At the St. Jude's Hospital, sir, Amara whispered. She told me to stay home. I'm not supposed to open the door for anyone. The hospital, Edward repeated, his irritation returning. Don't tell me she's lying again. Amara's silence filled the vast line. Then softly, she's not lying, sir. Listen, little girl, Edward ground out. Tell your mom when she gets back. She doesn't have to bother returning. She's fired. I don't tolerate irresponsibility. A heavy pause settled. He could hear her shallow, uneven breathing. Then a tiny whisper. Please don't fire Mommy. Edward rubbed his temple. Excuse me. Please, sir, she said, her voice cracking. She said if she loses this job, we can't pay for my medicine. Edward froze, the sudden shift tearing through his rage. What medicine? The girl hesitated. Mom said I'm not supposed to say. She said rich people don't like problems. For the first time, his voice softened, an unfamiliar roughness to his throat. What kind of medicine, Amara? I get tired a lot. Sometimes my chest hurts when I run. Mommy takes me to the hospital after she finishes cleaning. Edward swallowed, his voice wavering. And she's at the hospital now? Yes, sir. She works there, too, in another part. She cleans floors at night after her shift with you. The phone nearly slipped from his grip. His opulent office, decorated with priceless art, suddenly felt like a cold, empty cage. Why didn't she tell me? Because last time she was late, you yelled at her, Amara said, her tone utterly innocent. She cried in the kitchen. I heard her. Edward's breath hitched. She cried? Yes, sir. But she said you're good deep down, just strict. He was silent. The child's words cut him sharper than any business defeat. He could picture her, small, alone, clutching a pink phone with cartoon stickers in some tiny, darkened apartment. Where's your dad? He asked, his voice barely audible. Daddy left before I was born. Mommy says I'm her only gift. His anger was entirely melted away, replaced by a scalding wave of shame. Amara, do you have food at home? Yes, sir. Mommy left soup. It's cold now, but I don't mind. Milo, our cat, keeps me company. Edward stared at his trembling reflection on the polished mahogany. You shouldn't be alone. I'm okay, sir, she said softly. Mommy said God watches me when she can't. Maybe he told you to call today. His throat tightened. He tried to speak, but couldn't. Are you still there? She whispered. Yes, he managed quietly. Please don't tell Mommy, I answered. She'd be scared you'd be mad. He cleared his throat. I'm not mad, Amara. You sounded mad before, she said honestly. But you don't sound mean now. The silence that followed was heavy and profound. The man who managed billion-dollar deals was utterly incapable of responding to a 7-year-old. Amara, he said finally, can you promise me you'll stay inside until your mom comes home? Yes, sir. I promise. And tell her she's not fired. She gasped. Really? 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 And tell her I'll call back later. A tiny giggle of relief bubbled over the line. Thank you, sir. Mommy will be so happy. She prays for you every night, you know. Edward blinked. She what? She says even rich people need someone to pray for them. He couldn't speak. The call ended with a soft goodbye and the faint sound of the child humming a simple lullaby. The reckoning. Edward slowly set the phone down. The city lights outside blurred as he stared at his reflection. Expensive suit, perfect tie, and eyes that suddenly felt hollow. He was a man surrounded by everything money could buy. Yet for the first time, he felt truly poor. "What have I done?" he whispered to the empty room. He sat frozen. The words, "She cried in the kitchen, but she said you were good deep down," echoed in his mind, hurting more than any business loss ever could. He grabbed his coat, striding toward the door. "Sir, the meeting with the investors," Mason called after him, confused. "Cancel it," Edward snapped, "and give me the address of Marissa Grant. Now." The drive through the city felt like a descent. Glass towers dissolved into flickering streetlights, and polished sidewalks gave way to cracked pavement in the borough of Queens. When he finally reached a small, run-down apartment block, rain had begun to fall. He knocked hard. No answer, only the faint, worried meow of a cat inside. Then he saw it. The pink phone, illuminated by the street lamp, sitting on the floor through a small gap in the curtain. Guilt seized his chest. That little girl had spoken to him from this dark, cramped room while he sat in a chair worth more than her rent for a year. He drove to the hospital and, pretending to be a relative, got the information. Within an hour, Edward was standing in a bleak hallway of St. Jude's. The air smelled of bleach and fatigue. At the far end, he saw her. Marissa, wearing an oversized, faded uniform, mopping the floor near the emergency ward. Her eyes were red, her hands trembling from exhaustion. "Marissa," he called softly. She spun around, startled, almost dropping the mop. "Mr. Hale." "Sir, I'm so sorry for being late today. I'll make it up tomorrow, I swear." He raised a hand. "Stop. Don't apologize." "But you called," she stammered. "I called to fire you," he admitted, "and your daughter answered." Her face drained of color. "Oh, God. She wasn't supposed to." "Marissa," he said gently, "why didn't you tell me she's sick?" Tears instantly filled her eyes. "Because you're my employer, sir. You don't pay me to tell you my problems. You pay me to clean your house. And I need that job to keep her alive." Edward's jaw tightened. "You should have told me." She shook her head. "People don't like excuses, Mr. Hale. Especially rich ones." That sentence cut him to the core. He swallowed hard. "I'm not angry. I am ashamed." Marissa looked up in disbelief. "Ashamed?" He nodded slowly. "Your daughter said you pray for me every night." She gave a weak, watery smile. "Edo, you've always been fair. Hard, but fair. That's rare." Edward looked at her trembling hands. "How long have you been doing double shifts?" 6 months. Since Amara's diagnosis." "What's wrong with her?" "Congenital heart defect," she said quietly. "She needs surgery soon. I've been saving every dollar." Edward's eyes landed on a nearby hospital poster. "Blood donors save lives." His breath caught. "Marissa," he said slowly, "did you ever donate blood at St. George's Hospital last year?" "Yes, sir." They were short one donor during an emergency surgery. "Why?" Edward exhaled shakily. "Because the patient who lived that night was my son." Marissa froze. "You are your son?" "Quel accident." They said a last-minute donor saved him. "It was you." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Marissa covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't know." Edward's voice cracked. "You saved my boy, and I almost destroyed your world." He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a plain white envelope. "This isn't charity," he said, placing it in her hand. "It's a debt for what you did for my family." "I can't take this," she whispered. "You will," he insisted. "And from now on, you're not my maid. You're my full-time employee at the Hale Foundation. Full salary, health insurance, and complete coverage for your daughter's surgery and recovery." "Understood." Marissa shook her head, overwhelmed. "Why are you doing this?" He looked her straight in the eye. "Because your daughter taught me what it truly means to be human." The new fortune. Weeks later, the hospital room was bright with morning sunlight. Amara sat up in bed, clutching a small, stuffed unicorn. The tubes were gone, and her cheeks were once again a vibrant pink. Edward entered quietly, holding a bouquet of daisies. "Uncle Edward," she called, her face lighting up with a smile. He chuckled. "You remember me?" She giggled. "Mom says you help people now instead of yelling at them." He laughed softly. "Your mom says too much." Marissa, sitting in a chair, smiled warmly. "She's been waiting to see you." Edward knelt beside the bed. "You were very brave, Amara." She tilted her head. "You were too. You said you're sorry." He nodded, a lump in his throat. "Yes, I did. And I meant it." Amara looked thoughtful. "Mom said, when people change, God smiles." Edward's throat tightened again. "Then I hope he's smiling today." Marissa reached over, squeezing his hand. "Thank you, sir." He looked at her gently. "No, thank you, Marissa." As they stood together, watching Amara hum softly to herself, Edward realized a truth he never had before. Some people chase fortune their whole life, and others find it in a small child's innocent voice, calling them Uncle Edward. Outside the window, the sprawling lights of New York City flickered to life. But for the first time, Edward didn't need them to feel rich. One phone call, one innocent voice, and one man was forever changed. The billionaire had tried to fire his maid, but her little girl had revealed a truth, a debt of life, that broke his pride and saved them all. Do you think Edward Hale will completely change his personality, or will this moment just be a part of a slow, lasting transformation in his life?